Hi, I'm Tom Chick. I'm here with Bruce Garrick, who is listed there as Space Rumsfeld, dressed as Robert Fripp. I'm dressed as Sarah Palin, as best as I could manage that. Garrick, we are here in sort of a more rural area.
Mm.
Um,
hmm
this station wagon
hmm
could use a little decoration.
Okay.
In a lot of rural areas, you might find on this station wagon a Confederate flag.
Huh. Interesting. And that's because the people want to bring back slavery?
They want to honor the South. So actually, this was your idea because you sent me a link, and I couldn't believe this.
Mm-hmm.
You sent me a link to an article posted at a place called Freedom Outpost, and alongside the article there was a little offer to win. You could join a rally to win one of those jacked up pickup trucks, big old tires.
Oh yeah.
And on the side of it was a Confederate flag with the words Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Plastered on the side.
Yeah.
And so at Freedom Outpost you could win this. And I'm sitting here looking at this because I'm reading this article you sent me where this guy's premise was basically, you know what, the Confederate flag, people don't understand that it's supposed to honor the soldiers in the Confederacy. It's supposed to honor the war, and it's not racist. So get over it. Basically,
Right.
is what he wrote. And I would say wrote very poorly. He was not a very good writer. But why did you send me that link? Like, why did you refer me to that article? Because I couldn't disagree more with it.
Okay, good. Well, good, because because I got to say that when you visited me last, we had a discussion about the Confederate flag, and you had what I thought was actually a quite different opinion than what I had expected.
What was my opinion?
Your opinion was that the Confederate flag was not a symbol of racism. It was a Southern heritage symbol.
I said that?
Mm-hmm.
Can I take it back?
Well, you can explain yourself.
So at one point, it was absolutely a Southern heritage symbol, and in a lot of when I was growing up, that's how it was used. By the way, a lot of times, I don't feel that's the case anymore. I feel it has been completely appropriated by what is glibly called the alt-right these days, but basically by racists. I think it has been, as a symbol, it has been stained, like trying to defend
defiled.
Defiled, absolutely, and trying to defend its use is as misguided as trying to defend a swastika because hey, it used to be a Buddhist symbol.
Yeah.
But I think to me that's fairly recent. And
to be fair, so sorry to interrupt, but to be totally fair to you, so the listeners know that you haven't been here in a while. The discussion that we had was well before the Trump and the alt-right sort of thing. It was a quieter time, shall we say?
Well, and wasn't it even before South Carolina had the hullabaloo about having it flying over their state house? I don't remember when that was.
I think that actually may have been the reason we were talking about it.
Okay.
But so this is the thing, right? So I'm a Yankee. I grew up in the North, in Michigan, which was had men that were in the Iron Brigade. But when I was in grade school and junior high and high school, we got a very different sort of story of the Civil War than I think what was communicated to the people that I live around now in North Carolina. And that story was that the Confederacy was an illegitimate regime similar to the Nazis, and that much like the Allies landed in Normandy and single-handedly kicked Hitler's ass, the North single-handedly went down and punched Jefferson Davis in the mouth and basically set all these Southerners straight.
So how do you differ with that interpretation of the Civil War? Because I don't necessarily have a problem with that representation.
Oh, well, then that's fine. Okay, then I have to say that the reason that I put this topic out there, and we have a lot of topics just so the listeners can know we're always talking about various things that we can talk about. And the reason that I brought up the Confederate flag was that I thought we would have different that we would have different opinions. And the reason that I thought we'd have different opinions is that we were having dinner. It was me, you, and my wife. And you actually gave a pretty spirited defense of the idea of Southern heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what the flag meant to me for the longest time, and which is something that I'm still, you're a Yankee. I think of myself as a Southerner. And
Can you explain, though, the idea of Southern heritage? Because to me, it sounds kind of like the Wehrmacht, right? I mean, we weren't in the SS. We didn't, participate in the Holocaust. We were just fighting for Germany. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I see that's what Southern heritage means to me.
Southern heritage to me, there's I would say probably my favorite writer is a fella from, he's out of New Orleans, he's actually dead, a guy named Walker Percy, who felt very conflicted about his identity and his heritage. He was a Catholic, but also very existentialist. He was, he lived in the South, but he wasn't the typical stereotype of a Southerner. He was a very cultured fellow. And for me, the Southern heritage, and he expresses this a lot when he writes, is this sense of a defeated culture that has kind of been subsumed into the United States in a way against its will, and is having to live with that. And this, with every passing generation, this becomes less and less the case. But there is this sense that the South, and it goes to this whole silly idea like, hey, the South will rise again. Well, what do you mean rise again? It's not fallen down. It's a perfectly viable place to live. Right. And we have, and a lot of this is fallout from the way the United States developed, but we certainly have a lot of backwards areas in the South. Mm-hmm. Entire states are basically cultural wastelands, and I don't want to call out any names, Mississippi, but they're out there. Arkansas certainly was, in ways, one of them. And growing up, I saw Arkansas change a lot, by the way, when Clinton ran for office, and it became it became a focus of a lot of national attention that it didn't previously have, and parts of it kind of had to grow up and rise to the occasion. But so for me, Southern
enough, I just before we get too far off, and please don't forget what you're going to say, but I just want to mention that Walker Percy. The only reason I know Walker Percy, maybe, was that he's actually I think he got a degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which is where I currently am in the hospital.
Okay, sure. So they probably are very proud of him there, I would think.
And he also got a medical degree, as far as I know.
He also was deeply into movies in Hollywood, and part of what his most famous book is probably The Moviegoer, and he wrote one called Lancelot about a film crew that is shooting a movie in New Orleans, and you sort of find out that they're these morally bankrupt Philistines, kind of, that are messing up. I mean, it's this outsider's view of, hey, what happens when Hollywood comes to your town? Right. But yeah, so Walker Percy definitely was far more traveled than the typical, stereotypical Southerner.
Yeah.
So for me, Southern heritage does involve the defeat that they suffered at the end of the Civil War. And it does raise the question, how do you honor that? Like, how does a defeated power... How do you honor the losers in a war? Should you? And should any of their political symbols... Yeah, should their political symbols be relevant in any way? And I feel that, yes, they should. But the problem with the Confederate flag is it was appropriated by racists, basically. This guy who wrote this article, and I don't remember his name, that you forwarded me, he had this completely specious point, and I even wrote some of the... He wrote, where did it go? Like, his entire premise was, these groups, people objecting to the Confederate flag, they claim the flag to be aligned with such hate groups as the KKK, neo-Nazis, skinheads, and others. They don't really know what they're talking about, meaning the people who object to the flag. They can only remember what happened back in the 50s and the 60s. They cannot fathom the facts that the flag was born in 1861. To which I would respond, so what? I mean, it doesn't matter when it was born. It matters how it's been used recently. And that I will freely concede, and I'm increasingly aware, is used to represent racism. It's a dog whistle, basically.
Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna defend.
Why do you have your gun out? Because you're freaking people out.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's all right.
Okay.
So I want to say that I am resistant to the idea that symbols can be so easily subverted. If the symbol has a noble underpinning,
Mm-hmm.
then I think it's very hard. I think that the people who try to subvert it can themselves become sort of the act of their own act of attempted subversion isolates them because they don't have the moral sort of standing to appropriate the symbol. And I think that the problem with the Confederate battle flag is that it never had that moral standing in the first place, and in fact, it was sort of morally repulsive. And by the way, I want to point out that first of all, I don't agree with the article I sent you. I was sending it to you specifically because I didn't know how close to that article you were going to go because of our discussion. And I was sensitive to the fact that you did grow up in the South, and that identity is important, right? And it's not obviously I wouldn't even if you were born and lived for your entire life in Selma, Alabama, I wouldn't blame you for segregation.
Right.
That's not a sin that you inherit somehow. I think that the idea of the sort of collective guilt is taken a little too far. But I think that it's important to understand where symbols come from and to sort of sift through I don't know how to put it. Like you said, there are dog whistles that and the idea of dog whistle that the people who are listening can hear it, no one else can, right? I feel like the whole idea of the Confederacy as being this noble sort of cultural expression is really doesn't really hold with me. I mean, we have, and I'm down. I've never lived in the South before. This is, by the way, that I've been in North Carolina for almost 9 years, and I've had a lot of time to sort of investigate the South. I've been all over, gone to. The one place I haven't been to is Mississippi. Actually, no, I've been to Hattiesburg. I've been to Louisiana. I've been to Mississippi. I've been to Alabama. I've been to. No, sorry, never been to Alabama. I've been to Georgia. I've never been to Alabama. Mm-hmm. South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and this sort of idea of this genteel, pre-war society. I just don't think you can separate it from what the society was built on, right? Which was slave labor.
Well, it's certainly romanticized. I will definitely agree with that. Right. And yeah, whereas you think of it as genteel, there's kind of an aristocracy, and I think that was part of what was going on there. And I think Southerners would characterize that as no, we just had a sense of honor. And there's something to that. I mean, there were definitely different cultural values, and they included slavery. I mean, you can't deny that. But they weren't just slavery. There were.
I agree with you on that point. But I mean, and I also don't think, and I think we could also agree that it's not like you were talking at the. I happened to listen to your podcast. It was a very, very, very interesting podcast that you had about Star Wars, and you pointed out that it was a fantasy, right? There are all these good guys and there are these bad guys, right? And when they were in, it's sort of being subverted in a way because they're trying to put all sorts of philosophical questions on that the framework can't support, or at least in your opinion, which I don't disagree with you necessarily, but I don't want to paint that kind of fantasy picture about the North and the South, right? I mean, there's certainly racism in the North. I mean, it's not like the North were these people where blacks were perfectly integrated, and the South was this place where blacks were oppressed, and the North just came in and everything was peachy, right? I mean, that's not the narrative that any normal. I mean, that's not the historical narrative. But go ahead.
You mentioned before that you think it is important with these symbols that people understand where they come from. Why? Because I don't think it's important. I'm perfectly okay at this point letting the Confederate flag go.
Well, I mean, I am too, but I don't. don't think that there's no place that this place. I'm sorry. There's no place that this comes from that I want to protect. So I agree with you.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that a symbol can't be that it's important that if people establish a symbol for a noble reason, I think that it's not I think the people that follow those people have some sort of moral obligation to respect that symbol and not allow people to subvert it.
So, for instance, let's say people who are doing reenactments of the Battle of Gettysburg, for instance. Mm-hmm. They, of course, should be allowed, they should be able to use the Confederate battle flag without being accused of being racist, for instance, right?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I think the Confederate battle flag is inherently racist.
Well, wait, but you can't. But that's a noble use of it to recreate the battle. A Confederate flag.
That's not a noble use. Why is that a noble use?
Because you're recreating a battle that happened. You're honoring history. You're specifically honoring a historical moment by recreating it. It would be the same as having in Sid Meier's Gettysburg a Confederate flag.
The historical moment doesn't have any inherent moral value.
Well, so do you feel then that the Confederate battle flag should be removed from Sid Meier's Gettysburg?
No, I think that you can represent things as I think you can represent reprehensible things.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that when you use a Confederate flag because you were playing a Confederate soldier in a reenactment of the Battle of Gettysburg, mm-hmm. you should not have people yell at you that you're racist because you have a Confederate flag.
I understand that. No, that's yes, I agree.
Oh, okay. I thought you disagreed because that and I would even extend that to the swastika, by the way.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I think that my point is that I think we have different points here. I think that what you're saying is that for historical reasons, you shouldn't censor symbols,
right?
But my point is that if you have a symbol that was associated with some inherently non-abhorrent ideal,
right? Like the Confederate battle flag.
No, to me it's an abhorrent ideal. So that's where we disagree.
So you then don't feel that this idea of people in the South during the Civil War who weren't necessarily, because some of them obviously just wanted to protect their economic interests, but others of them probably did believe in the supremacy of states' rights. And they fought either for that or they fought because their loved ones fought and they didn't really understand the causes. And it was a sort of a community thing. Like, mm-hmm. my city is on this side of the war, well, I'm going to defend it. Right. You don't feel that for them that the Confederate flag was honorable. Like everybody who took up the Confederate flag wasn't just doing it because they thought slavery was a good idea.
Well, that's my Wehrmacht example.
Right, exactly. And I think that's true. And there were people in the Wehrmacht who were good people who didn't believe in gassing Jews.
I think there are a lot of people in the world that are good people that did terrible things.
Right, but so I guess we're agreeing here. How does the flag fit into that? Like those people, the flag only became an abhorrent thing around when it was used basically as a counter during the Civil Rights Movement, as a dog whistle.
The flag became an abhorrent thing when it became used as the flag of an illegitimate criminal regime.
So you are then agreeing with the fact. Well, see, because that I think that gets to Southern values. It's an illegitimate criminal regime because it lost the war.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, if the South had won the Civil War, the North would be the illegitimate criminal regime.
No, a society that enslaves people is an illegitimate criminal regime.
We think of that now, but that was not, for instance, the British Empire before it abolished slavery an illegitimate criminal regime?
No, only if it had been opposed by an internal regime that wanted to
I'm sure there was an opposition party that was like, yeah, we should get rid of slavery for a while before they abolished it. I don't think they just woke up one morning and was like, yeah, we better strike that off of the roster there. I'm sure it was opposed for a while. So briefly, you're saying, while there was a discussion about abolishing slavery in the British Empire, it was illegitimate and criminal?
No, I think that the British Empire appropriately abolished slavery prior to the abolition of slavery in the United States. I think that it was never opposed by a it was the social factors that were able to eliminate slavery in Great Britain appropriately worked. I mean, that you can there's some level of historical sort of, I don't know how you call it, consideration you have to, you're not going to judge, Genghis Khan by, his treatment of the people he conquered necessarily, because that was simply a time when, it was a very brutal time, and people were, the survival of nations was assured by very different means than they are today. But I think once you have a sort of a majority government or a government in which is split, and in which the offending party tries to subvert that government through the sole, basically, ideal of slavery, it becomes illegitimate.
I would also disagree with it being the sole idea of slavery. Again, there were people who participated in the Confederacy because they believed in the supremacy of states' rights. It wasn't just slavery.
The idea, the development of the idea of states' rights was tied up in the idea of the preservation of slavery. I mean, there are a whole bunch of really good histories that have been written about this era that I think my reading of them, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not a historian, but my reading of the era is that the fundamental problem between the northern and southern states was that the southern states realized that their economic future was doomed if they could not preserve the institution of slavery.
Okay.
And once they decided they were going to preserve the institution of slavery by force, they became illegitimate.
And if they had won the war, that's not how it would be discussed these days.
Well, of course. What if the Germans had won the war? What about Man in a High Castle?
Right. I guess I'm sort of throwing out this kind of characterizing it as legitimate or criminal is a relativistic thing based on who wins the war.
Well, of course it's relativistic, but I mean, I disagree with relativism. I think that the idea of enslaving people is not by our, by the standards that were in place at the time. I think that there was a significant moral objection to slavery. I mean, the Russians had abolished serfdom at about the same time that the Civil War happened, right? And slavery was already illegal in Great Britain, and the South wanted to keep slavery. And I disagree that it's some kind of question that you just you have an arm wrestling match. You're like, well, you like this kind of hot sauce, and I like that kind of hot sauce, and we're gonna have a wrestling match. We're gonna arm wrestle, and whoever wins their hot sauce is better.
I have no idea what you're getting at with that, but I'm not at all defending the institution of slavery, or all I'm saying is that there were people who participated under the cause that the Confederate flag represented who didn't do it because they were defending slavery. That's all I'm saying.
Because a lot of people didn't own slaves, right? I mean, there was a big sort of desertion was a huge problem in the Confederate Army, especially because the social contract was felt to be breached, because the landowners could, I think, exempt one person for every 20 slaves that they owned. There was the slave owning exemption. I agree. I mean, I agree that a lot of people got screwed.
So why then can't we honor those people somehow? Not necessarily with the Confederate flag, but why do we? Why do you want to characterize?
Why did they make a decision to support the people that were screwing them over?
Did you say why would they make the decision?
Yeah,
for plenty of reasons. There's the popo. Oh no, it's a paramedic. For plenty of reasons, as I mentioned before, and some of those reasons were honorable.
What were those honorable reasons?
Because my brother is joining the militia. Don't shoot that guy. Oh my God, Garrick. For instance, because my brother was killed by Union soldiers in the battle at something Creek. Okay. So therefore,
this Stead's running because of something.
Well, you're wreaking havoc here.
Why?
I'm going to pretend I don't know you. Oh my God, you're massacring people. You've just completely undermined any point you were trying to make.
I am you know why? I'm honoring the heritage.
Well,
of
here come the
people.
cops. I'm going to let you honor your heritage with the cops.
All
I'm
right.
going to stand back here and see what happens. Oh, this guy might have dropped some money. Let me see if I. Yeah, let me pick up his money. All right, I just made $18 from that guy you killed.
Good. Right.
I want to. Does Japan? Japan uses a different flag than what it used during World War II, right? The
Yep.
Imperial Japanese, like, it had that the rays coming out of it. And they don't do that anymore, right?
Right.
So they had to change their flag.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. So yeah, there was at one point where I would have stood by the flag as being as not necessarily being racist, and I don't think that's the case anymore.
Okay.
I don't think guys like me. It's basically been taken from us. Those guys are chasing you, not me. So I'm just going to get out of the way.
Well, I'm gonna. Yeah.
Oh my! Look,
What?
you've got a whole bunch of. You better keep running.
That's a train. Oh, I just got shot in the back.
One of
do I
the
do
guys
this?
just called
You?
you a maggot. Yeah, this is getting terrible. I'm just going to pretend I don't know you. Talk about an illegitimate criminal regime. That's what you are now in this game. I want to read that horrible article that article that you sent me.
Yeah.
The conclusion that it came to, I thought was really funny. It was written before the election, and I just want to read you the final paragraph of this guy's
Do it.
sort of Jeremiah about, oh, how come I can't use the Confederate battle flag because at one point it was only used, and he basically explains why a flag is used in a battle. So that people know where to go and which
Right.
direction to move. And
A waypoint. It's a waypoint.
yeah, exactly. It's a waypoint, and that doesn't at all absolve what it's also used for. I mean, you can say that. I just thought that was silly that he's explaining why a flag is used in battle as a way of representing. And he even, I think, implied that it saved lives by telling people where to go.
It's just the article was abysmal, but I just wanted to see what you would think about it.
So I loved the closing paragraph that the guy had.
Go.
Because he wrote it before Trump was elected. He wrote, "It is a shame that our once great country has fallen down to accept the actions of the few, even over the voice of the majority. In all too many cases, the few have yelled so loudly that they get what they want, even when the majority feels otherwise. Now, our country makes decisions based upon who is offended rather than upon constitutional rights. Germany was much the same way in the late 30s and early 40s. Because you could apply that paragraph to something about Trump's victory. There's a little histrionics to it, to be fair, but I love that this guy, before Trump was elected, was leveling this complaint.
I think the complaint's just specious in any case. I don't think it really applies any more to Trump than to. I mean, who's offended? I mean, that's.
Who's offended? The white rural voters that voted for Trump are offended. Like, I think they voted out of offense. Of course they are. They absolutely are. They're offended by this idea of minority rights, and they feel like they're being passed over what they should be getting. You read Hillbilly Elegy, you know, or no, you didn't. I did, but yeah, I think a lot of people who voted for Trump.
You did.
Well, you sent it to me. I think you sent it to me. Yeah.
I read it. I ended up reading it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So that those are people who are offended, and those are the kind of people who voted for Trump. I think. Yeah. But that's for a whole other discussion.
Yeah, that's a different discussion. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I guess we both agree that the Confederate battle flag isn't a good. It's not a good look.
Well, let me also say, like, my political views have certainly. I'm sure you're probably the same way. There was a time, Garrick, and I am loath to admit this because I could not have disagreed with my younger self. There was a time where I thought gay marriage was not a good idea, where I was opposed to gay marriage.
Yep.
Now, I don't feel that way now. I'm 180 degrees from that now. I believe it should be, it's part of the human condition, being able to marry who you love, and it should be extended to, that right should be extended to everyone. But there was a time when I was like, well, it's really not setting a good example for children, and same-sex parents aren't as culturally helpful to raising a child as. I mean, it was just. I think back to the things I used to believe, and I don't know that guy.
Did you ever believe that the Soviets had the right idea?
I remember. All right, so here's an example of how backwards Arkansas can be. When I went to college, I loved where I went to undergrad college, a little liberal arts college in Conway, Arkansas called Hendrix College. And
Oh yeah, I know Hendrix College.
No, you don't. How do you know Hendrix College?
There was a guy in that when I interviewed at the University of it was I think Louisiana State University. I interviewed there for a residency. I didn't go there obviously, but there was a guy there who had gone to Hendrix College. He was a resident in neurosurgery.
Was he a decent guy? Was he a jerk? Was he an idiot?
He's a fine guy. He was a reasonable guy. He was definitely a Southern good old boy.
Yeah. Well, Hendrix College is in the heart of the South Bay. It's a little tiny town, Conway, Arkansas, that is not. It's not very cosmopolitan, you might say. But at any rate, I went to college there, and we had, and I wish I could remember who it was. We had one of our congressmen come speak to our class, like one of our civics class.
Yep.
Shoot, and I remember because I think the guy ran for governor. It wasn't Huckabee, but it was someone along those lines.
Was it Jim? What's his name? What was his
Tom
name?
Cotton?
No.
Jim Guy Tucker.
Jim Guy Tucker.
No, I don't think it was him. But along those lines, it was a fairly notable state politician, and he came and he spoke to us, and he was a very conservative, speaking to this very liberal group of college kids who were learning about things.
Liberal?
Pardon?
You guys were liberal?
It was college. It's a liberal arts college. All college kids are liberal, please.
No, not us. I was in the College Republicans.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's this weird core group of weirdos. When Garrick, when you're in college, you should totally be a liberal.
I've never been a liberal.
Well, at any rate, why?
I saw what liberalism was.
Are you
behind the Iron Curtain?
Oh, good Lord! Yeah, that's liberalism. At any rate, this conservative, blowhard state politician is speaking to the class, and I don't even really remember what he said. But afterwards, he did Q&A, and someone raised her hand, and she said to him, the question he called on her. She said, "What's wrong with communism?" And this guy. So this would have been 1988, something like that. And this guy had no idea what to say. And he just sort of stammered and burbled for a minute, and he finally arrived at his pat answer. And he said, "Oh, well, it's fine if you're a communist." And then he took the next question.
Yeah,
but he could not elaborate why communism was a bad thing, which I probably at that time couldn't either. I mean, you could certainly bring up the pitfalls of it, but I didn't have this sense for it that I do now. But I just love the idea that it was obvious to everyone in the class that he had no idea what the answer to that question was. And that he was only opposed to communism because of his party politics. And,
Right. That's okay. But was he opposed to communism?
Yeah, but he said it's fine
well,
if
then
you're a
it's better
communist.
than being pro-communist.
That's true.
Give him a break.
But I do also, one of my early political influences too was a fella whose father had been displaced by the Sandinistas in Nicaragua.
Yep.
And he was very influential in me being conservative when I was younger.
Good.
Because there was a time when I was like, yeah, the Sandinistas are wonderful, and they're bringing better health care to the Nicaraguans, and Daniel Ortega is their savior, and talking to my friend Max, whose dad had been run out of the country, I sort of saw another side to it and became very conservative for a while.
Good for him. Max!
Max, if you're out there, you were right. Thank you.
Yeah. You're right.
So, all right. Well, Garrick, so I'd forgotten that you might have misidentified me as someone who supports the Confederate flag. One of the most important movies I feel that you can see in the wake of Trump's election. There's two movies. One called Loving, which is amazing about.
I know that movie. Yeah.
The other one is not an amazing movie. It's a terrible movie. It's horrible. It's called Desierto, and it's about these immigrants who are sneaking across the border. This is a Mexican film, and these immigrants are sneaking across the border, and a racist just is fed up with it, and he stalks them and massacres them.
Okay.
And it's a terrible horror movie, but it is an important perspective at how we are seen by some people, how we are now the viable villains in a horror movie from the world stage. And the villain drives around in a truck with a gun rack, and it's got I don't know why it has "Don't Tread on Me," which. I guess that's a sort of a rebel value, but it has a prominently featured Confederate flag sticker on it. And that is how a Mexican director makes a horror movie to appeal to a Mexican audience about America.
Well, Tom, can I fill you in on a secret?
What?
America has been a villain for a lot of people for a long, long, long time, much before this particular historical moment.
Right.
A lot of people have hated us for a long, long, long time.
But let me tell you something, Eric. I think now we might deserve it.
First of all, I disagree with you. Second of all, I want to remind you of one thing.
What's that?
America is under attack by terrorists. They hate us for our freedom.
Well, so you sound a little bit like a church lady impression. That's weird. Garrick, you do not do hick very well. Sorry to tell you that.
All right. That was actually a W invitation, but that's all right.
All right, well, on that note, I'm glad to set the record straight. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to hop this train.
Yeah.
And see where
like
it takes
hobo.
me. Yep. Hobo.
Yeah.
Is that offensive? Can we say hobo?
Yes, it's offensive to hobos. It's offensive to people who have a stick with a thing tied on the end of it. I've never been able to get like a stick with stuff to tie on the end of it.
Called a bindle
stay
stick.
there.
Yeah, it's a bindle stick.
A what?
A bindle stick. Bindle. Yeah.
No, you mean Kindle.
No, bindle. Before there was a Kindle, there was a bindle. That's the
Really?
true thing. Yeah, it's a bindle stick.
Wow. Whoever invented that should sue Amazon and Jeff Bezos. No.
Well, it looks like it's sinking.
No.
Yeah.
Sinking?
Totally.
No water in here.
It's sinking.
No, it's not.
Well, it kind of was a minute ago.